Mori Jin vs Daewi Han from the God of High School explained. During the finals of the Seoul tournament, we saw the two friends fight it out, but what happened and how did it go? First of all, let's take a look at the combatants. We have Mori Jin, a Renewal Taekwondo user with power level 13, HP of 780 and a GP of 56. Up against him, we have Daewi Han, a full contact karate user with a power level of 9, HP of 630 and a GP of 41. In all three aspects, Mori Jin is superior. On top of all this, Mori Jin also has the greater fighting skill, which led to Sangjo Baek giving Daewi Han a mere 20% chance of victory. Speaking of Baek, Daewi goes to him for help against Mori Jin, because Baek already showed knowledge of Renewal Taekwondo when he copied the 3-stage round kick while attempting to counter Daewi's dance of White Tiger. When Baek witnesses Daewi's wave of Blue Dragon, he questions whether Daewi is planning to kill his opponent. Later, we are shown that Daewi's teacher instructed him to kill any Re Taekwondo users that he comes across. On top of that, just before the fight, Daewi gives Mori a death stare and warns him to fight like his life is on the line. With all that, it makes you wonder, is Daewi willing to kill Mori in order to win the fight and save his friend? Anyway, with that, let's get into the fight now. The fight was scheduled for 5 rounds, and in the first round, Mori starts off completely dominating Daewi. The fight takes several different turns, which are referred to as stages. So we can look at this as stage 1 of the fight. During stage 1, Mori completely picks apart Daewi, while himself being untouched. It looks as if he could have got a perfect flawless victory if he wanted to. At this point, even the spectators spoke of the massive difference in levels. Stage 1 ends with Mori stretching his hand out to Daewi to help him up, but Daewi uses this chance to begin his counter-attack, using cheap and dirty tactics. This is the beginning of stage 2. Daewi takes Mori's hand, but immediately punches Mori's foot and then uses the second stage kick of Red Phoenix around the back of his knee. It turns out, Daewi was waiting for his chance from the beginning, as a way of bridging the gap between himself and Mori. One thing to note here is that if Mori didn't stop to help Daewi and instead just kept on attacking, going by how one-sided the fight was until then, it's possible that Mori could have won the fight with perfect health. A perfect, flawless victory like he did against Manseok Gang. That would have been an insane feat. Anyway, after being kicked around the back of the knee, Mori attempts to kick Daewi behind the head, but then the shockwave of Daewi's Red Phoenix blows Mori away. This is when Daewi starts to gain some ground. We then see the extent Daewi is willing to go as he resorts to dirty and underhanded fighting, something we know he usually wouldn't dabble in. He covers Mori's eyes and uses dirty boxing. This is all obviously because he is now desperate, knowing his friend is on the brink of death. He also uses a Brazilian kick, which is obviously not underhanded, but a good way to disguise his attacks, since they are similar but different to his Kyokushin Karate. With that, Daewi gains the upper hand. In the midst of all this, Mori manages to take a step back and find some space to get into a low round kick stance. As a precaution against that, Daewi puts up a high guard, not knowing what Mori is going to come with. Mori goes for a hook using the Re Taekwondo guard breaker, unlocking his guard. Then to capitalize on that, Mori lands a 3-stage round kick, which appears to work because we see Daewi about to drop. However, the damage wasn't as bad as it looked because rather than falling, he goes straight into a fist of Black Turtle, followed by a kick of Red Phoenix. This gives Daewi the opportunity to start attacking Mori again. This attack signifies the start of stage 3 of the fight. This is when a fierce exchange begins between the two. It starts when Daewi begins his stance of White Tiger. Mori attempts to counter it and a fierce exchange begins. The exchange is pretty even for the most part, but in the end, Mori wins out and breaks through the White Tiger. He then goes for the true round kick. However, Mori was unaware of the real purpose of the 4 Guardian Gods technique. He might have beaten the dance of White Tiger, but everything was already set up for the final attack, the last stage, the wave of Blue Dragon. You see, the 4 Guardian Gods technique is basically one that manipulates airflow, so the final stage of the technique, the wave of Blue Dragon, uses the manipulated airflow and directs it all towards the opponent, causing severe damage, possibly even death. Daewi successfully lands his Blue Dragon, but Mori survives due to partially blocking it with his true round kick. Even still, he was badly hurt. His blood splatters everywhere, some even spilling onto the audience. At the same time, Daewi was also hurt, partly due to the high stress of the technique and partly due to Mori's true round kick. The countdown begins and Mori barely manages to get up with only 2 seconds left. After they slowly get up, the bell rings, signifying the end of round 1. Because Daewi manages to land the Blue Dragon, he ended the first round with higher HP than Mori. Daewi had 104 HP left, while Mori only had 58 HP left. Before round 2 begins, Daewi finds out that his friend Seng Tai Woo, who he's been fighting for all this time, is now dead. As round 2 begins, both competitors get into an intense confrontation. Because Mori asked for it, Daewi uses his blue dragon once again, but this time Mori successfully counters it with his true round kick. He does this by countering the previous stages. For example, when Daewi uses the kick of Red Phoenix to create a shockwave, Mori digs into the ground and uses ground drawer to counter the shockwave. This meant that the wave of Blue Dragon didn't get the chance to achieve its full power, so Mori manages to break through it. However, he does damage his leg. This results in Daewi losing all his HP and basically losing the match, but in the last second he was saved by the bell. But after taking such a devastating attack, he slumps over in the corner of the ring, feeling completely defeated. I mean, what is he meant to do now? He's badly hurt and his reason for fighting is gone. Maybe he can just give up now? When the referee asks Daewi that very question, he responds that he will never give up. During the break between round 2 and 3, Mori regains much more HP than Daewi does. Mori is now at 84 HP, while Daewi is only at 26. Despite Daewi not wanting to give up, with little strength and energy left, he gets up to only get beaten further by Mori. He then questions himself, why can't I give up? At this point Daewi wasn't fully conscious and so he didn't know the answer to that question. He just knew he didn't want to give up. But at the same time, he asked himself, will I finally be able to rest? Just when Mori was about to finish Daewi off with one last kick, Mira intervenes and Mori pulls his kick back. Mira then tells Daewi how he was a lot stronger during their fight. She then hands Daewi a book containing a letter from his friend written shortly before his death. The letter talks about how Seng Tai knows that he doesn't have much time left and that he's aware that Daewi joined some fighting tournament for his sake. He then tells Daewi to stop thinking about trying to save him and try to win the tournament since he's already there. That helps clear Daewi's mind and motivates him, allowing Daewi to fight the rest of the match. That brings us to stage 4 of the fight, with both fighters fully determined to win with no added baggage. After a fierce clash, Daewi's HP drops to 1. We then enter the climax of the fight. Once again, there is a clash between Mori's ground drawer versus Daewi's Red Phoenix, where we can actually see Mori's kick slicing through the shockwave of Red Phoenix. Next, as Mori is going into his true round kick, Daewi uses its momentum and turns it into a wave of Blue Dragon. At that exact moment, Daewi's power level jumps all the way to 12. Mori is badly hurt by the Blue Dragon, but manages to stay on his feet. He then rebounds off the ropes and comes running back and unleashes his new technique which he just learned thanks to Daewi, Mori Jin Original, the kick of Blue Dragon, which is like Daewi's wave of Blue Dragon except it's a kick and it looks like it has greater damage output. Mori Jin doesn't directly attack Daewi with it because that can potentially kill him. I mean, he only had 1 HP left. He just directs his attack besides him and completely destroys half the ring behind him. The impact Daewi feels is enough to drop his HP to 0 and finish him off. With that, the fight is over. Daewi is on the ground and Mori Jin comes up to him giving his hand and saying with a smile, "We're friends now, right?" To which Daewi replies also with a smile, "You can't win against idiots." The significance of this moment is huge. Firstly, this moment solidifies the friendship between Mori Jin and Daewi Han, meaning Daewi wasn't left with a huge void in his life after losing Seng Tai. There is actually a parallel between the way Daewi became friends with Seng Tai and how he became friends with Mori. Both happened after a fight, where they both reached out their hand and declared their friendship. Secondly, Daewi was finally able to take in Seng Tai's mindset of trying as hard as he can, then laughing even if it doesn't work out, which is evidenced by the fact that Daewi smiles at the end, which is something that, before, Daewi thought was really weird about Seng Tai. In the first instance, Seng Tai lost and he was the one smiling, while Daewi, the winner, wasn't. In the second instance, Mori, the winner, was smiling, but Daewi, the loser, was also smiling. One last thing I want to say before I wrap this up is about Daewi's attitude towards friendship. Daewi takes friendship very seriously, and that's why he refrains from making friends easily. At one point he even admits that he doesn't consider Mori and Mira as friends or close friends, and that he's afraid of being friends with Mori because he's just like Seng Tai. Daewi is the type who would die for his friends, so being one of Daewi's friends is not a light matter, it's not a joke. Daewi may have lost 1 friend, but he gained 2 new friends to fill in the void. Anyway, what do you guys think? What do you think about Daewi's attitude towards friendship? And do you think Mori could have won the match with perfect health if he didn't stop to help Daewi? This is Anime Talks 101, so let's talk about it. Comment down below, I wanna know your thoughts.